Okay, hi. My name is David Warburton. I never actually lived in Wynberg, but when I was a child, we did use the shops in Wynberg, and I have been to Wynberg quite a few times, so I can compare what it's like now from what it was like then. And we're talking now early 70s, so I was 10 in 1970, and I can remember the shops, all the shops there. There were lots of small shops in those days. There was no mall, there was no Chinese mall, there was no Wynberg mall. You could see in places where they had knocked down old Edwardian houses, and there was where Riverstone Road sort of meets the main road, and beyond Wynberg Bridge you could see where they had knocked houses down and they'd built flats and stuff. But there was an open piece of ground where the mall is now, which was, not built on for a very long time. There was a gym there called Super Bodies, as I remember, for a time. And there were also, as I said before, lots of shops, lots of small shops. So you had a butcher and a grocer and those sort of things, as you did in Claremont and just about everywhere else. And things like Pick and Pay, they did exist then, but they weren't everywhere. And so you could say I kind of lived at the tail end of the old retail experience, where you went to the greengrocers to get your grocery shopping done, and then you went to the butcher to get meat and sometimes poultry. So it was very different. They wrapped your food up in white paper. I mean, there are places where they still, like some fish and chips shops, where they still do that. But in those days, you bought a joint, you bought steak, whatever, they wrapped it up like that, and it was a visit to different shops. And I also remembered particularly the butchers, because they displayed their wares. If it was, say, a Muslim butcher, it would have a sheep's head or a Jewish butcher, it would have a sheep's head with all the parts of the animal displayed around it. It was a proper display. And if it was I suppose you call it a Christian butcher, then it would have a pig's head with all the body parts displayed around. And people were perfectly happy with that. I mean, now we all put it in little nice cellophane, bags and stuff like that. And it's very different. You don't see the animal, you just see the cut. But in those days, we used to see the animal. Chickens had their giblets in and all that kind of stuff. Well, I suppose they still do now in some places, but that was quite normal when you bought, say, a chicken or something, which you also could buy from a butcher. They also sold poultry. They would have all the giblets in and stuff like that. So it was a very different from now. And it's only in retrospect, now that I'm doing this exercise, that I remember how different it was. I'm just thinking now, I just ducked back home because I'd forgotten a few things, and one of the things was my cell phone. And that technology simply didn't exist in 1970 when I was 10 years old. It just didn't. So, I mean, it's a shock. You don't realize how much things have changed if you live the experience. But it was, as I say, the little shops absolutely everywhere. Everything was a separate little shop. So if you took your dry cleaning somewhere, there was a dry cleaning shop in there, in the main road. And it was, as I say, very different. A lot of cars parked along the street, because in those days there seemed to be less car parks, and so people parked on the street, but maybe less cars as well. And the buses, which were very different then than they are now, but it was more regular. And of course, going by rail was quite normal. Unfriendly surface perhaps, but it was always there. You always knew a train was coming. It was, those were very different times. I walked there mostly. If my parents were shopping, then they obviously would be in a car, but I walked there quite a few times, because as I got older and they could trust me with a key by myself, I would go to one of two cinemas that were in. One was in the main road where the Chinese mall is, and now their names have completely gone out of my head. I was going to bring notes to check that up, but I didn't do notes. and then it was a stair kinney-core one, so it was very plush inside. It stood where the Chinese Mall is now, yes, right next to... I actually get my facts right because I can't remember if it was part of what used to be Woolworths, which is now also gone. But yeah, it was in there, and it had nice seats. And you could sit down there, you could get up. Oh, sorry, I'm also looking across. So we just saw somebody going by, and I shouldn't be looking with the camera on. But yeah, I remember that the stair kinney-core cinemas by then had plush seats with lots of room in front, so if you had to get up to go to the loo in the middle of a film, you didn't have to tread on like 10 people's toes saying, oh, sorry, excuse me, you could get up much easier. But there was another one in Church Street, which they knocked down a long time ago, and that was the old style cinemas with, when they switched the lights off, there was hardly any foot lighting. So when they switched the light off, you were in total darkness, and the seats were very close together, and the aisles were very steep. So if you made sure you went to the toilet first before because you were so cramped in those little chairs. But those were quite good times. I actually remember in one instance, my mother took me early out of school for me to see a film. It was a historical film, Cromwell. So my mother liked British history, so she thought I should see this film, and I quite like going early from school, so that was rather nice. And I remember those little sort of childish things. I also remember, I don't know if people of my age will probably remember this, there was a chocolate ice cream called Top 10. So it had chocolate, and then there was like green ice cream inside, so peppermint ice cream inside, and a bit of vanilla ice cream, and the chocolate was covered in sort of pieces of peanuts, I suppose. And I remember that because there is something like that now, but it's not the same. But I remember Top 10 because they didn't cost very much. But they were worth the money they did cost, something like 15 cents or something like that. And it was, but there were ones much cheaper, And I remembered at first I used to get it all over my trousers. As I got older, I perfected the art of eating the chocolate ice cream quick enough so that I didn't mess my pants. But anyway, I find it, I've got this kind of coordination thing where I'm looking at the film and eating the chocolate, and I can't do two things at the same time, but I sort of learned to eat these things quickly. Yeah, now I remember all those things, but those are kind of very childish, I say childish, but they were like childhood memories of how things were in those days. And so you see things differently. And I didn't think about what I was looking and what the place looked like. It's only now that, because I work in Wynberg and I'm at Wynberg Library, that I can see how much the place has changed and how the main road has deteriorated quite a bit, and Wynberg in general. I know, I'll give you an example, not of the main road, but just in Wynberg, there's a place called Cafe Verdi, which was a very nice watering hole for people who sort of like sport but didn't want to go to a sports bar. And they folded. They were, I think, a victim of COVID, as like so many other people were. And it's now currently for sale, and they have a sign-ups on the, and this is now on the expensive part of Wynberg, Chelsea Village side. But they've got a sign-up saying that there's no alcohol on these premises, just to discourage people from breaking in. There is no alcohol anyway, they'd soon discover that, but they just don't want people to smash all the windows at an extra expense. The owner has had it up for sale like forever, and you would think, first of all, A, they have to put up a sign like that because there is crime, and B, a place like that now waits to be sold, while in pre-COVID times it would have changed hands so quickly that the people running it, the patrons wouldn't even notice that it had changed hands, kind of thing. So that's kind of a bit sad. I mean, I hope that will improve. But there are other memories I've had, which are both old and current, were the Shakespeare plays that they had Maynardville, which was very. I remember when I was in high school, attendance was mandatory, obviously, but I remember one more recent one pre-COVID, when I was I don't know, it was like 2017, 2016. They had Macbeth on, and somebody's phone rang, and the lead actor who was playing Macbeth said, "Turn that fucking thing off." And he got an ovation, literally a standing ovation from the audience. And the Argus the next morning ran that story. So that always stuck in my mind. And it got a big laugh. The guy with the phone, I think, just wilted on the spot, which I thought was hilarious. But those are the sort of memories I had. And being at Wynberg Library, also seeing the way the people who used to come in the old days were, big readers. Now the people we have coming in now are more school children. More people take out items because they're studying rather than reading. So our demographics have changed quite a bit. And yes, it has changed a lot. I mean, I remember the Maynardville, when they had the fair in February every year, which seems to have folded a bit. And that was also all pre-COVID. People aren't making quite the same money. People don't have the time as they did in the old days because the economy is not strong anymore, and so people don't have discretionary income, and it shows. And of course the main road, which has really got bad, although there are plans, I think, to clean the place up when they put in the My City bus, which they've been threatening to do since forever. It's like the bypass. It goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. But so there are a lot of things. Wynberg has changed, but as I said, I work here, but I don't live here, so I don't see the other changes. A lot of which I'm sure other people will talk about. But it's a bit sad, I think, because the main road has changed so much. Chelsea Village still looks more or less the same. Army Camp doesn't look the same at all, because I remember from the earliest times. It also seems to have deteriorated a bit. But and the church still looks the same. The Ingekerk still looks the same as it's always looked, even in pictures and stuff like that. It's always looked the same to me. And obviously you do expect changes, and there are some positive ones. I mean, we are now more mixed, but on the other hand, there's less, there's like rubbish lying around, and the area around the station has deteriorated very badly. But as I say, back then, you only notice these things in retrospect, but one remains hopeful that will change. Yes.